arms, and my right arm is aching more because that's where I got my flu shot the other day. I'm all vaccinated, even for the flu. Ordinarily, I do not get a flu shot because, it's a lagging thing. They get last year's flu. You're not protected against this year's version, whatever this year's version is. So I broke down because I've seen too many people have developed these bad colds and they turn into the flu. And I just figured I need protection this holiday season coming up to the fall. So I've got my flu shot. I'm triple vaxxed, triple boosted. I'm double vaxxed. I'm so 5 shots. Six. I got my 6th shot. I'm ready. I'm ready for. Well, I don't have to see anyone at the polls because I voted already. I don't have my sticker. They didn't put enough adhesive on my I voted sticker, which comes in your mail-in ballot. Now, I know if you're an Asian American, you love to vote by mail. I mean, it's convenient, it's easy, and of course, it's the reason why the Republicans want to limit our votes. They want to somehow be very persnickety about every single technicality when it comes to either absentee ballots or mail-in ballots. And if you are a mail-in voter, I hope you sign the back of your form. I mean, that there will be so many votes thrown out because people, popped a ballot in the mail, but they forgot to sign the back. So I hope that's not you, because believe me, I opened my paper today and I saw all the stories about what election deniers are going to do to deny our votes, even after we voted, right? I mean, it's hard enough this build up to the vote, right? This is hard enough. I mean, we're getting bombarded with misinformation, bombarded with ads filled with lies. I mean, and that's not the hard part. The hard part is you get your ballot in, your ballot has to be counted. There are all these challenges to disqualify your ballot. And then once your ballot is passed whatever test that it's put through, and then once it's actually counted, that then becomes the next issue. Now you got to count all the ballots. And then even after the ballots are counted, they have to be certified, more vetting as to, whether or not they're qualified. The Republican Party has made it most difficult to have a democracy. But you know what? That's all right. I mean, it's within the right of the Republican Party, but they have taken this to new heights as of 2020, as of 2016. I mean, really, before the former president, number 45, before he began to doubt the election of 2020, we didn't really have this problem. I mean, we had cases of hanging chads, and that was difficult during the Bush years. That election might have gone to Al Gore, but Al Gore, once the Supreme Court did its thing, I think Gore was a real patriot. He believed in the idea of the peaceful transition of power, and he believed in the ballot. And he pretty much, he let it go and said, the people have spoken. And the Democrats they're not the ones to destroy the semblance of democracy that we have, but leave it to Donald Trump the former president, number 45, he began it. And now we are about to see a major stress on our democracy beginning tomorrow, November 8th. Welcome to the program. I'm Emil Guillermo, Emil Amok to you. This is my Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. We're just talking about the vote, the election, and I mean, I was speaking to friends of mine over the weekend. When do you want to talk about the election? One of my friends was, look, I voted, I did my thing. I don't want to talk about it anymore because I don't know what else I can do besides what I can do. And then he said something that was pretty revealing. He said, my mental health is more important. And granted, I believe it is. One's mental health is important. He didn't want to get caught up in the anxiety of, waiting for the vote to be counted, just like I outlined, waiting for votes to be vetted, qualified or disqualified, and then counting the qualified ones and determining who won. And it could take days, if not weeks. In the case of Georgia, if no one gets 50% of the vote, it could take many, many weeks. So we are in a kind of democracy limbo because of the kind of challenges that we no doubt will see if things don't go the way of certain parties. And, at the head of the line in terms of looking to make sure that every vote is legit, well, everyone will be, but then there will be those who will be looking at every vote no matter what, and that will be the Republicans. So we are in for a long, long period between the time polls close November 8th and the time we get a sense of what happened on November 8th. Today, November 7th, we should just bask in the glory that we have a sense of our democracy as it has always been, but knowing that all that changes come November 8th. And it makes you worried. I am worried for what happens if all those election deniers, and Biden in his speech said up to 300 people on the ballots, different ballots, election deniers. And if a large majority of them win, and mind you, the 300 who are on ballots throughout the country, they're in offices high and low, right? From insignificant, well, relatively small local offices to, let's say, CNN did a compilation, said 22 gubernatorial candidates, about 19 Senate cabinets, 12 Secretary of State candidates. They're the ones who run the electoral show. They had at least 5 dozen, more than 60 people who are election deniers in those key spots. And that's what makes me worry about tomorrow, November 8th, and what will happen. And, we do this show. I call this the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs, Asian American X's. Fill in your ethnicity. And I mean this. If you are wondering about the vote, if you're wondering about anything that's going to happen tomorrow, I think Asian Americans we're in a unique position, right? I mean, we know why we're here. We know why our families came here. And we know it wasn't just for economic opportunity. We know it was for democracy. And whether you or your family originally came here on a boat or on a plane, or maybe you went through a refugee camp before coming here and being put in a place like Nebraska or Minnesota or some place affiliated with the church who helps refugees. However you came here, you know, we all. I mean, in my case, my father came in the 20s. He was a colonized Filipino. My relatives were all here. They came at different times. Some came because they were escaping Marcos. Some came because they finally survived the long wait for visa approval. So we all have our stories of why we came to America and what we fled. Dictators, regimes we escaped from. In fact, we have generations of stories on how we put our lives on the line as we yearned for democracy that we found right here in America. So if you haven't voted or if you voted, think of that. After you've cast your ballot, think of that. Think of all that. And keep in mind that that's what's at stake with the vote on election day. Right? We're in this final push to save our democracy. You'll be bombarded by all sorts of flyers in the mail, campaign ads, things in all sorts of media, news, trying to push misinformation and disinformation. And I just say, look, try to put all that stuff away and just think about that one story about why your family is here in America. That's why you vote. That's how you vote. Don't forget that. It's important because you will be bombarded over the next 24 hours. More ads filled with misinformation and disinformation. I mean, I can't tell you how many I've seen. Both parties, left, right. It's kind of like a generic format where they assert that so-and-so candidate, insert name of candidate, is too extreme, too radical. You never see any ad say, "Oh, Bob Smith is too conservative." I mean, in most, middle of the road areas, oh, he's too conservative. Well, that's my guy. But you will see Bob Smith is far too radical, far too extreme. And when you see anything like that, you just have to stop and you have to kind of meditate on this one and just let it go. Discount that ad as a piece of misinformation designed to rile up your emotions and to motivate you to go to the polls with a passionate anger, right? Well, you should have a certain amount of passion when you vote, but don't get used. Don't be manipulated by those kinds of misinformation and disinformation type ads. I mean, on the East Coast, I heard from a number of people Asian American voters, who've received flyers that denounce white racism. White racism, you say? This is not to be confused with white folks like the KKK who exhibit racist types of attitudes towards blacks and people of color. When I say white racism, it means the alleged bigotry toward whites by, they say, Democrats, progressives, and people of color, which is a bunch of hogwash. It just doesn't make sense. And it really contorts the truth. But there are these flyers going out to Asian American voters, and they're spreading these unsubstantiated claims from right-wing media such as how people will be hired and fired according to their skin color. Yeah, this is a fear tactic, right? What, I'm gonna be fired because of my skin color? And then there's this highlighted phrase, quote, whites and Asians need not apply. So these flyers bunch Asian Americans with whites in an attempt to stoke our emotions so that in a tight campaign between Democrats and Republicans, this will be the tiebreaker. This is going to decide how you vote, right? Don't be taken in by this manipulative piece of campaign, this hit piece on the campaign. It's the work of a group called America First Legal, which is a right-wing group founded by anti-immigrant Trump advisor Stephen Miller. And the intention is they're trying to be the conservative answer to the ACLU, which is really weird to me because it means what? Spreading lies as truth under the guise of free speech. Is this America First Legal's answer to the ACLU? Beware of it. Discount it. Rip it up. Terry White, give it a good laugh. Don't let it influence you. I mean, they're doing a number of campaigns, not just on the East Coast, but in the South, especially in places near the hurricane damage where they're trying to say that Vice President Kamala Harris was giving preferential treatment to people of color for Hurricane Ian relief. Not true. Not true. So be wary of this kind of misinformation. It's happening all over the country, the South, Northeast, and then, of course, there are bits of misinformation right where I am in California. In California, you had Congressional District 45, which incorporates Orange County and the Little Saigon area. Representative Michelle Steele, who got reapportioned and has to run in this California 45 district, actually used doctored flyers accusing her opponent, Jay Chen, of teaching communist materials in school. This is the kind of emotional appeal to provoke unsuspecting Vietnamese American constituents and also to other Jay Chen and make him sound like some kind of radical fiend, radical communist fiend. Chen, whose grandmother escaped communist China to Taiwan, is an Ivy League trained Naval Reserve officer with political experience serving as head of a community college district. Jay Chen, well qualified to serve in the House. Jay Chen does not deserve the kind of hit piece perpetrated by Representative Michelle Steele. Michelle Steele, who is a Korean American married to a white Republican operative. I notice now people refer to Michelle Steele as Michelle Park Steele to remind people that, hey, this is an Asian American. But I don't know. I hear Michelle Steele. The first time I heard anyone mention her maiden name, Michelle Park Steele. But all mentioning her maiden name does is let you know that this is a particularly abhorrent situation because it's Asian versus Asian. Asian on Asian manipulation. But it's the nastiness that you'll see in a close race in the democracy we've become. And already it's hurt Michelle Steele because she's been called out from a number of community leaders. The LA Times went against her, endorsed Jay Chen. Jay Chen, California 45, endorsed by the LA Times, primarily because of this rather devious bit of Asian on Asian campaign manipulation by Michelle Steele. And all of it a lie, right? I mean, Jay Chen isn't a communist. Michelle Steele is guilty of, well, some dirty campaigning, lies, right? Because to get your vote, they're using little lies, relatively little lies, because the big lie just isn't enough. And you know what I mean by the big lie. Over the weekend, former president, number 45, responsible for the scapegoating of Asian Americans as the cause of the pandemic, made those jokes, scapegoated us, which in turn led to thousands of hateful transgressions on our community. Well, 45 was at a rally in Florida over the weekend. Actually, he said it a number of times. But in Miami, he said, quote, "The election was rigged and stolen, and now our country is being destroyed." This is the former president. Because he's continuing to run on that lie that has been disproven at every level. Well, let me say, he's not officially running for the presidency again, but he is campaigning for others using the lie, as I said, that has been disproven at every level. Now, the election, was neither rigged nor stolen. And what surprised me most at Trump's repeating of the so-called big lie is that he was modest, not taking credit for destroying our faith in a system that he helped to erode. I mean, that's 45's claim to fame. Everyone else was too classy. Everyone else was too ethical, believed in the peaceful transition of power, believed in our elections. No one would ever doubt the elections to the degree that 45 did. And that is the real fear, right? That if all the election deniers get elected, we'll have a strain of the January 6th infection within our government ready to wreak a kind of chaos capable of imploding our country from within. And that's for real. I mean, I think we'll see almost immediately after November 8th, as soon as ballots have begun to be counted, there will be challenges in key states, legal challenges that will make what happened in 2020 seem like the challenges by Republicans. They've had a couple of years to try to perfect this kind of campaign trickery. But that's what we have to worry about. And of course, these election deniers, well, they're capable of so much more if they do get elected, if it is found that they've actually won, because, they're not just election deniers, they're DACA deniers, they're abortion deniers, they're affirmative action deniers, but ultimately, they're just democracy deniers. So already, Washington Post reports that in 3 key battleground states, already efforts to question the integrity of every mail-in ballot on any technicality. So this is what we have going into the election tomorrow. We vote on November 8th, but then comes the litigation, the challenge of every vote until the deniers get the count they want. That's the kind of democracy we seem to be in right now. But don't give up hope. Vote. If you haven't yet voted, although I hope you're like many Asian Americans who have cast their ballot by mail. Just make sure you sign the back of your ballot. If you must go in person, that's great. I love voting in person. Usually I do. But who knows what kind of obstacles will be in the way at the polls and what kinds of physical violence or the threat of physical violence will be present. You know, there's long lines. I don't know. If you vote in person, please go early. Know when your polls are closing so you can plan your day. It's so important to vote. And if you've already voted, or if you're just waiting until sometime tomorrow, in the meantime, disregard last minute ads on TV and radio, on social media especially, or in your mailbox. Don't get bogged down by the information onslaught that will come your way. As I said, you should know the truth by now. You do. Think about why you're here in the first place. Think about why your family is here. As I mentioned, Asian Americans know the reason why we came to the U.S. and why we value democracy so much. Asian American Filipinos, we know why. We know why many of us fled the Philippines. A lot of it coincided with the 1965 Immigration Act here, but that, as I said, coincided with the rise of Ferdinand Marcos, the declaration of martial law. And fortunately for us, there was an option. We can apply for visas and come to America. And many of us did. Now is the time to remember your family's origin story to America. Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Hmong, Japanese, Indian, Pakistani. Many of your stories go back generations. The Chinese, for example. The Vietnamese. The Hmong. Some of whom came maybe 17, 20 years ago, relocating from Laos through refugee camps. We all came here not just for the economic opportunity. We came here for the freedoms. We came here for the political freedom. Cambodia, Myanmar, Burma. Remember your family's origin story. What they left behind and why they left. And what they dreamed of when they arrived here in America. You've got to remember, that story is relevant and relevant November 8th. Because all that is at stake on Election Day. Don't forget it. Don't forget that. So we have an interesting run-up to the election. Like I said, you're going to see so many ads, bits of disinformation. I'm hearing people say, hey, you better get off Twitter. You better get off Twitter. I put the live feed of this show on Twitter, as well as some other places, Facebook Watch, Facebook Live, YouTube at Emil Amok. I haven't figured out what to do with Twitter yet. I mean, I barely am on social media except to distribute and let people know this is what I'm saying. This is what when I'm thinking that here's some writing I've done, I don't use it as a social place so much, but there are some alternatives. I saw where Elon Musk is actually trying to, according to reports, trying to hire some people who he fired inadvertently, trying to hire some people back. Some stories have hit the wires, saying, well, a lot of people are trying these other social platforms. I mean, it's getting to the point where maybe we should just get off the social platforms and go back to the relevant media platforms of old, the trusted platforms, because the social platforms are a little too loosey goosey for the truth. In other words, we can't trust any of it. I mean, there's always this level. Well, you might say, oh, well, we just trust everything, Emil. We trust the mainstream networks. There was a report on the Paul Pelosi situation that NBC, right, had overstated some things. They used some unnamed sources that I'm sure some editors at NBC knew about, but the unnamed sources turned out to be unreliable, and they had to retract the story, NBC, about Paul Pelosi, which is too bad, because generally speaking, the networks have been trustworthy. Most of the networks. I'm just saying, this is the new media environment we're in now, and maybe the best case is to, I'm big at diversity in terms of getting a lot of different sources and a lot of different news organizations, but maybe you rely on one or two, which I can't see as being right, because that's like the conservatives saying, well, I only believe in Fox. I don't believe in anyone else. Fox and that One America, they're the only sources. I believe in all of them. I look at right-wing sources. I look at left-wing sources. And then I have to vet them all. It's almost too bad that we have to do this, that we cannot trust certain sources. And this is why journalism has moved into this new realm where it used to be one news source quoted something or cited something, and then you could usually trust it. Now you better say, according to CBS or according to CNN or according to Fox, because we don't know. We don't know the truth. We have our sources, established media sources, but even they get used, as in the case of NBC and the Paul Pelosi story. That Paul Pelosi story, it broke when the first time it broke when I was traveling, and the full impact of that story is still happening. So I just saw where one of the networks has an interview with Nancy Pelosi today, her first interview. I haven't seen it yet. But my heart goes out to the Pelosi family and to Paul Pelosi. And this is the thing that should have happened. Everyone should have come together and said, yeah, we fear physical violence. We fear what's going to happen to our democracy. We're going to come together as Americans now, and we're going to condemn that attack on Paul Pelosi. We're going to condemn what they're trying to do to build a wedge between us all in our democracy. Instead, you got Carrie Lake laughing, making jokes. You got Republicans not coming together, not uniformly condemning the act. That's the new democracy we're in. And that's what makes me worried. And that's what makes me want to hang on to November 7th. instead of moving right into November 8th. And they'll count the ballots, and already ballots are being counted. 40 million votes have already been tallied, according to reports. But I just like to savor this November 7th, this day, because no matter what happens, good or bad, once we enter November 8th, it's a different time. It's a different time and a different kind of democracy we'll find ourselves in. And I'm trying to be equanimous, as they say, not overreacting, trying to keep in mind that, yeah, we have been through these tough times before. If you don't believe we've been through tough times before, think of how things were 15 years, 30 years, 60 years ago in America. Think about an America before Roe v. Wade. Think about an America before Brown versus Board of Education. We've been through worse times as a country, and we pulled through. Our democracy worked. But it's taken time. It's taken years. Civil Rights Act, a little more than 50 years ago. And now it seems like we're going backwards in an accelerated fashion if things don't go right for us tomorrow. I hope not. We'll persevere, I'm sure. Well, that's what I would have said on a normal November 7th. But now I've got to cross my fingers. Here's one thing that gives me hope. Tonight is the Powerball jackpot, $1.9 billion. And I know that the odds are greater that we will pull through as a democracy November 9th. The odds are greater than me winning the $1.9 billion tomorrow. So I guess that's hope, right? That has got to be the sign of hope that we are left with. My goodness. So I hope, if you haven't done your mail-in ballot, I hope you got your mail-in ballot in. Don't forget to sign the back if you're in California. Hey, look, here's the other thing. If you have not registered, this is the truth. There are some states that have same-day voter registration. You get a provisionary ballot or a provisional ballot, and that gets counted ultimately. But you don't have to get left out of the party. Like I said, 40 billion have already turned in their ballots. But if you haven't even registered, states like Hawaii and California, Asian American states, same day registration. You could do it. You get a provisional ballot, but you get to count. So contact the Secretary of State's website, find out if all this talk about elections and voting gets you excited. It might, it should. Democracy and the fight to preserve it, the fight to hail it and preserve it, it should be, it should be infectious. You should be excited about this day. And that really is what we need. We need to be excited that we get a chance to affirm our democracy tomorrow, as opposed to taking the tack that, wow, it can be scary for our democracy. I believe it is scary, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that Asian Americans, African Americans, Latino Americans, all Black, Indigenous people of color, all communities, all BIPOC communities, get out there and vote. Because everyone's needed. November 8th. All right, so regular viewers, listeners of my show know that you can find replays of my show on amok.com, amok.com. You can also find them on Twitter at Emil Amok, facebook.com/EmilGuillermo.media. Also on YouTube at Emil Amok, EMIL AMOK1. They're all there. You know, I did some interesting things. I read Joe Biden's democracy speech of a week ago. Usually I'll have him say it, but I read it as I annotated as I went along. But catch that on, I think it's on show 423. 424, I talked to Daniel Phil Gonzalez about the elections and about affirmative action. So a lot of good past shows if you're looking for something to give you a different perspective from the perspective of Asian and Asian American issues that you'll get or won't get in the mainstream. Definitely check out my column on the ALDEF blog, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aaldef.org/blog. And so now I'm going to cut it short today. Look, I think it's time to maybe try to be quiet. Do a little meditation. I find that it helps from overreacting to the things like those racist flyers and mailers that I talked about earlier, or some of the campaign ads I'm seeing on TV in the final seconds. I think I would just turn them off. Like my friend was telling me, that's what he's done. He's turning them all off. He did what he could. He voted. He doesn't want to get involved in the anxiety of democracy because his mental health, he said, is too important. And I guess I agree. And as I found in the last couple of years, meditation has been my friend. And I think it will enable me to look at November 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th with a certain calm. Especially since I've done all I can. I voted. And so, regular viewers, listeners of this show know, I like to end each show with a little meditation. And usually it's a little loving kindness, a little metta to help us through. When there's doubts, when there's anxiety, show a little self-kindness, show a little self-love. But before you show it to yourself, show it to others. And amazing things can happen. You might see it returned twofold, threefold, fourfold. You'll see it returned and you'll be better able to cope with the things you're dealing with right now. So, as I wish for me. I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Live 2 p.m. Pacific tomorrow. Check out the replays on amok.com. Till then, Mahal Kita.